According to people close to the situation, the conflict unfolding inside the Sussex home is being described in unusually stark terms. This is not a mild disagreement or a passing phase. Those familiar with what is happening say it is the most intense confrontation the couple has faced since leaving royal life, and some believe it could determine whether the marriage survives at all. This dispute has nothing to do with household routines or lifestyle preferences. At its center is a question that cuts to the core of parenthood: how their children should be raised, and what kind of world they should grow up in. Specifically, it is about visibility, privacy, and the role Archie and Lilibet may or may not play in their parents' public lives. The divide is clear and deeply rooted. Prince Harry is said to want absolute privacy for his children. In his view, they should be kept out of public view entirely, away from cameras, commentary, and public expectations, until they are old enough to decide for themselves. This desire is not abstract. It is shaped by his own childhood, one marked by constant exposure, intrusion, and loss. Meghan, by contrast, is described as supporting a different approach. Rather than complete invisibility, she reportedly favors controlled, intentional appearances. Supporters of this view say she believes limited, carefully managed exposure allows the family to control the narrative rather than leaving it to speculation, paparazzi, and rumor. These are not positions that sit easily together. They represent two entirely different philosophies about family, identity, and public life. And according to insiders, neither side is willing to abandon their stance. People familiar with the couple say conversations around this issue have become emotionally charged and increasingly difficult. What once may have been framed as a theoretical disagreement has become urgent as their children grow older, and as decisions about branding, public presence, and future projects continue to arise. One person close to the situation summarized it bluntly: this issue does not stay resolved. Even when it appears to be settled, it resurfaces again and again, because it reflects a deeper disagreement about values, not tactics. This tension reportedly intensified following changes to the couple's charitable and professional structure. When their foundation was repositioned with language emphasizing work as a family, it set off alarm bells among those who understand Harry's sensitivities. To him, that phrasing raised fears that his children could become part of a public-facing mission before they were able to consent. Those close to Meghan, however, see the same language as natural and modern. They argue that many public figures integrate family life into their work without harm, and that refusing to acknowledge the children at all only fuels unhealthy curiosity. Insiders stress that neither parent believes they are acting selfishly. Harry is driven by a powerful desire to protect his children from repeating what he experienced growing up under relentless public scrutiny. Meghan, on the other hand, reportedly believes that visibility can be structured, purposeful, and even beneficial if handled carefully. This conflict did not emerge overnight. People familiar with the couple say it has existed in some form since before their first child was born. What has changed is the pressure surrounding it. As opportunities arise and fade, as public interest fluctuates, and as their professional ventures face challenges, the stakes feel higher than ever. For Harry, this issue connects directly to unresolved trauma. Friends describe him as still carrying deep emotional scars from childhood, particularly around how his life and grief were consumed by the public. The memory of walking behind his mother's coffin, watched by the world, remains central to how he understands exposure and harm. From his perspective, shielding his children is not about control or fear. It is about preventing irreversible damage before they are old enough to understand what is being asked of them. He reportedly believes there is no safe version of public exposure for children, only varying degrees of risk. In his view, partial visibility is not a compromise, but a slippery slope. Meghan's reasoning follows a different logic. Those familiar with her thinking say she views complete secrecy as unrealistic and potentially counterproductive. By avoiding all public acknowledgement, she believes the children become even more intriguing to media outlets and the public. Supporters of this position argue that selective visibility can normalize the children's presence and reduce the sense that every image or mention is extraordinary. The disagreement is not merely tactical. It reflects two different interpretations of power, protection, and opportunity. And because it touches on identity as much as parenting, it has proven impossible to resolve through simple negotiation. Those watching the situation closely say this is why the conflict feels so dangerous. There is no neutral middle ground. Each compromise feels like a betrayal of core beliefs. As one observer noted, this is not about winning an argument. It is about who each parent believes they are and what kind of future they believe they owe their children.
The tension surrounding this disagreement is magnified by the couple's broader circumstances. Their professional landscape has changed dramatically since they first stepped away from royal duties. Projects once announced with confidence have struggled to gain traction, and some ventures have ended earlier than expected. This context matters because it shapes how every decision is interpreted. Visibility, branding, and public interest are no longer abstract concepts. They are directly tied to financial stability and relevance. Observers note that when pressure increases, unresolved disagreements tend to harden rather than soften. In this case, the children have become the focal point of competing instincts, one parent pulling inward toward protection, the other pushing outward toward engagement. According to people close to the couple, arguments over this issue have grown more intense over time. They are described not as calm discussions, but as emotionally draining exchanges where neither side feels fully understood. What worries those in their circle most is the pattern. Each new opportunity reopens the same wound. Each decision becomes a referendum on values rather than a practical choice. There is also concern that this conflict risks becoming a power struggle. When compromise feels impossible, decisions can turn into tests of dominance rather than collaboration. Commentators who study the couple suggest that what once bonded them, shared grievances, shared battles, shared narratives, may now be working against them. It is difficult to present a united front to the outside world when the most fundamental disagreements are internal. Parenthood, as many observers point out, changes relationships in ways nothing else does. Differences that once seemed manageable can become defining when children are involved. Choices stop being reversible. Stakes become permanent. In this case, both parents are described as deeply invested and genuinely convinced they are acting in their children's best interests. That sincerity is part of what makes the conflict so painful and so intractable. Harry's fear is that exposure cannot be undone. Once a child becomes part of a public story, privacy can never be fully reclaimed. Meghan's concern is that refusing to engage with the public leaves the family vulnerable to speculation and loss of control. Neither fear is irrational, but they point in opposite directions. Adding to the strain is the reality that their public identity remains tied to the institution they left behind. Observers note that much of the attention they receive, positive or negative, still stems from their royal connection. That reality complicates efforts to build something entirely separate. As interest wanes, pressure increases to find new ways to remain relevant. In that environment, decisions about family boundaries become even more fraught. Those watching the situation describe it as a stalemate with emotional consequences. Someone will eventually have to give ground, and whoever does may struggle to let go of resentment. Friends of the couple say this is why the current moment feels decisive, not because a separation is inevitable, but because the underlying conflict cannot remain unresolved indefinitely. At its core, this is a story about two parents shaped by very different experiences, trying to protect their children from harm as they understand it. The tragedy lies in the fact that their definitions of protection no longer align. What happens next remains uncertain, but one thing is clear to those observing closely. The pressure inside the Sussex household has rarely been higher, and the outcome of this disagreement could shape not just their marriage, but the lives of their children for years to come.